I'm going to be sharing my version of a salmon en croute. I mean, who doesn't love salmon and pastry? I prepare this salmon en croute with a little twist, which I know you are going to love. The other recipe is this lentil, chickpea and sweet potato curry, a perfect midweek meal for everybody to enjoy. For more of my recipes, you can check out all of my ebooks over on my website at www.tishwonders.co.uk. So let me know which recipe is standing out for you, which one you cannot wait to try. Also, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching my channel from? Let me know in the comments. So let's jump into the first recipe, take notes, get inspired, get cooking, get creative. Let's go. This recipe is my lentil, chickpea and sweet potato curry. When I'm unsure of what to cook and I just want something that just feels so good and I know for sure I am going to enjoy and devour, this is the recipe. We're going to be adding so many wonderful spices. I'm going to show you how I cook this quick cook, no fuss, no nonsense, but does the job, hits the spot curry. We are going to be using some sweet potatoes. If you'd prefer to use something like squash, because that just feels better, or that's what you have, that will work. Regular potatoes will also work. There is something really special about using sweet potatoes though in this recipe. So for the base of this recipe, the 3 essentials: garlic, onions and ginger. Lots of ginger in this. So we're going to be using some chickpeas. I love to use chickpeas, especially when it's kind of like last minute, because I feel like chickpeas just soak up flavor really quickly. We're also going to need some beluga lentils. I like having some pre-cooked lentils in pouches just on hand. You can just throw them into anything. It's a great way to get some extra protein if you need it, and it's very, very convenient. We're going to use some coconut milk. I often get asked when I use coconut milk in recipes what an alternative is. You could make up a cashew cream if you'd prefer, and if you're not vegan then you could use like regular cream. So we're going to need some fresh coriander. I know in other places you call it cilantro, but in the UK we call it coriander, just so there's no confusion. We're also going to use a red pepper. So for the spices, I think this is where you can kind of really adapt things, get playful, get creative, work with what you know that you enjoy. I love cumin seeds, fennel seeds, nigella seeds. I'm using some curry powder and some garam masala. And this is me keeping things very simple because I can go in when it comes to spices, but I'm trying to keep this, like I said, just as simple as possible. So we're going to start by cooking up the essentials, the base of this recipe. So we're going to finely chop our onions. We are going to chop our ginger. You can grate it, but for this curry, I like to chop it. I have different recipes where I like to grate some. I like to grate some. I like to chop. And we're also going to finally chop up our garlic. So we're going to chop up our red peppers. If you have some random odds and ends in your fridge, say like carrots or tomatoes, and you want to add them, you could definitely do that. We are going to peel our sweet potato, chop them into cubes of your desired size. So grab a large pan and heat some oil, or you could heat some ghee. So you could use coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, whatever you fancy. Throw that in and then place in your onions, your garlic and your ginger, just cooking everything on a low to medium heat. So for the spices, we're going to begin by throwing in our cumin seeds, fennel seeds, nigella seeds, and we are going to season with some sea salt and some black pepper. You can throw some chili in if you want to. I just didn't have any chili at the time, but you could definitely throw some chili for some extra heat. I'm going to add like a hot curry powder, but if you want heat, then definitely add in some chili. Next step is to throw in some tomato paste and just kind of like cook that down with the onions. Let everything combine and continue to bring out the flavors in the spice seeds. So once everything has cooked down for a few minutes, sizzling away, but kind of like on a low heat, we don't want to burn anything. We're going to pour in our coconut milk, and then we're going to add our spice powders. So our curry powder and our garam masala. You can go ahead and throw in any other spice powder that you might want to maybe experiment with at this stage. Next, we are going to throw in our cooked chickpeas along with our cooked lentils, and we're going to throw in the red peppers and our sweet potatoes. If you found any other vegetables that you wanted to add, go ahead and add them in at this point. Go ahead and pour in some water. This is obviously just to cook the sweet potato down. The sauce will thicken up a lot. Combine everything, cover the pan and reduce the heat to very, very low. Cook down the curry for like 25 to 30 minutes, making sure that you keep an eye on it. Stir it every now and then just to make sure it's good. Once the sweet potato has softened and the sauce is thickened up and your kitchen is smelling absolutely incredible, go and place in some chopped fresh coriander. If coriander is not your thing, then definitely leave it out. You could maybe throw in some parsley, because I know I will get asked what are some alternatives. You could throw in some parsley if you want like a touch of a fresh herb. I went ahead and served my curry up. So I served it with some basmati. Can't go wrong with basmati. Topped it with some more coriander and some more nigella seeds. This variation of chickpeas and lentils and sweet potato is such a winner. I promise everyone who tries this recipe will love it. For the next recipe, I know some of you are going to be thinking, what can you use in place of salmon? If you want to try this recipe out for the other elements but don't eat salmon, maybe you could try using a seasoned piece of tofu. Maybe that would work. Or perhaps something like steamed butternut squash, like a piece of steamed butternut squash or steamed beetroot. Maybe that could also work. Obviously, if you use a vegetable, you're not going to get the same nutritional profile as you would from a piece of salmon. So you might want to supplement with some type of extra protein on your plate if this is a meal for you. I don't want anyone to miss out on the recipes that I'm sharing, so I hope that these suggestions, these other options help in some type of way. Let's jump into this next recipe. Let me start by saying, if you were to ask me what one of my favorite things, like I say, like in my top 5 favorite meals or dishes that I could eat or prepare, salmon en croute would always be in my top 5. It is one of those recipes, you can hear it in my voice, it literally makes me so excited, but it will have you speechless. It is so damn good, and I cannot wait to share my version of a salmon en croute with you. For this magical recipe, we are going to be needing some salmon fillets, skinless salmon fillets. If you want to make it kind of like family style, you could definitely use a big piece of salmon and just make it as one salmon en croute, but we're going to be doing like mini individual ones. So for our garlicky mushroom spinach filling, we're going to be using some shallots and some garlic, lots of garlic. I really wanted the sweet notes from the shallots. Of course, if you don't have shallots, use regular white or red onion. It will still work. So I'm using some crème fraiche for the creamy part of our garlicky filling. So for this creamy filling, which I cannot stop talking about, we're going to be needing some spinach and we're going to be needing some mushrooms. What is better than spinach and mushrooms in a creamy sauce? I don't think there's any other type of vegetable that is better suited. But of course, you know, work with the flavors, the taste, the vegetables that you like. You can obviously adapt this. I'm using regular chestnut mushrooms. You could get fancy and use some oyster mushrooms or any other type of mushroom that you enjoy. The use of fresh herbs in this creamy filling, in my opinion, is really important, especially the dill. Delicious. And we're going to use some parsley as well. Something that separates my salmon en croute from any salmon en croute that you've probably tried is the use of this red pesto. I had this light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to add pesto to it. It will be delicious, and red pesto specifically. If you're about that pastry life and you want to make your pastry from scratch, hats off to you. I bought this pre-made pastry at Puff Pastry. I would advise to buy like an extra box than needed, just so you have it on hand, just in case anything goes wrong when you're making this. Have an extra box on hand, trust me. So the steps to creating this heavenly dish, we are going to start off by finely chopping up our shallots. Yeah, do the same with the garlic. We're going to use quite a bit of garlic, so get ready to chop up that garlic. And then we're going to move on to the mushrooms. Again, we're just going to chop everything as finely as we can. Don't worry about perfection when it comes to chopping these mushrooms. They're going to go into the filling, just roughly chop them and you'll be good. Grab a pan and heat it on a medium heat. Place in some butter and just a touch of olive oil and just let that melt down before throwing in the shallots and the garlic, just mixing everything. So once softened, season with some salt and some pepper. So go ahead and throw in your mushrooms. Of course, me being my extra self, I could have just kept it really simple. I wanted to throw in some extra herbs. So when I say mixed herbs, I mean the label literally says mixed herbs. It's just a standard blend from a supermarket. Any dried herbs will work. So yeah, I threw in some mixed herbs, just continuing to cook everything down before throwing in the spinach. It's so deceiving. You think you're throwing in so much and then it literally turns to nothing. So throw in your spinach and just let that wilt in the heat. So the next stage involves chopping up the fresh herbs. So we're going to place in that crème fraiche along with the fresh herbs and then some lemon zest. So remember that the heat will be switched off at this point. Give it a taste just to check that the seasoning's good. Just don't get carried away and eat it all. All of these very little details, like adding in extra garlic and adding in lemon zest and the dried herbs with the fresh herbs, just really will take this salmon en croute to the next level and will probably be one of the best that you've ever tried. So with our pre-rolled puff pastry, we're going to cut it into 4 sections. I would advise having 2 of the 4 sections a little bit bigger and using the smaller pieces as the base and then the kind of slightly larger pieces as the cover for the salmon en croute. So we're simply going to place on our red pesto, followed on by our salmon. I advise that you give your salmon fillets some salt and some pepper and some lemon juice. So place over your mushroom and spinach mixture. Then we're going to brush on some egg to seal the edges. We're going to take our larger piece of pastry and literally throw it on top like a blanket. Then we're going to cut around the edges, and I like to seal my edges with a fork just to make sure everything is enclosed. So this is the part of the process when making salmon en croute where you can get as playful and creative as you want. You can make different pastry shapes. If you'd prefer like a circular salmon en croute, do your thing and run with it. I think I was keeping things quite simple, so I just scored the top of the salmon en croute and I finished off by giving it an egg wash just so everything will be shiny and that pastry will be golden. Yes, wait for it. So place your salmon en croute into a preheated oven of 180 degrees and leave it in there for about 30 to 35 minutes. Just keep an eye on it, making sure that it doesn't burn. This salmon en croute is an ultimate crowd pleaser. If someone doesn't like this, trust me, honey, it ain't you, it's them. This is so damn good. Flaky pastry filled with salmon and the most divine garlicky mushroom spinach filling with that red pesto to top things off. A dream, an absolute dream. 2 amazing recipes to take into your week. Get cooking, experiment with new tastes, new flavors. Remember to let me know which one you're trying out first in the comments. I will see you all in my next video.